what was it that Admiral Byrd found on the South Pole? Incredibly enough, in an official American Navy documentary film, we found footage of what Admiral Byrd found on the South Pole. He found giant freshwater, never freezing, with areas around them that were free of any snow. And in that film, we show footage of the Navy planes landing in these lakes. But even more so, he found, to his amazement, that his planes were disappearing very quickly. A lot of his planes were attacked by anti-gravity devices that were operated by the Germans there, by anti-gravity saucers. A lot of them crashed into invisible barriers and disintegrated in mid-flight. This is an indication that the Germans had already perfected the force field shields, and they were up and operational around the German colony at Neuschwabenland. When he was retreating, basically the whole operation lasted for 1 week. They started at the end of February 47, and by the first week of March, they were through with the whole operation, and much earlier than scheduled, and they departed. And in an interview at Buenos Aires on his way back, Admiral Byrd made the incredible statement that the Third World War would probably be with an adversary coming from the polar regions of our planet, an adversary that has the ability to fly unobstructed from pole to pole. He was referring to the Germans at their South Polar colony at Neuschwabenland that were operating their anti-gravity craft with impunity and could fly circles around the globe, and of course would shoot out of the sky any of the attacking American planes.
In 1961, the Brazilian Navy was conducting a series of experiments in the Antarctic. According to one of my colleagues who was in one of the naval ships, suddenly out of the ice packs, a large spacecraft emerges and takes off vertically at a terrific speed, shocking both the American and the Brazilian naval forces that were there. So it is clear that as late as 1961, we have official documentation from the Brazilian Navy that there is some other, emphasize other, underline this 3 or 4 times, life force or intelligence stationed at the South Pole, possibly to observe the scientific developments on the planet, possibly to observe the military operations and the forces of the East and the West in some type of Mexican standoff as the Cold War develops. We have clear documentation from other sources and other South American governments that some technology that is not human-based is there. That is to say, some type of higher evolutionary experience is there, and this is the next chapter of our quest. Why are they here? What do they want from us? And do they, namely the higher or alien intelligence, have were some type of directing mechanism both for the US as well as for the Soviets as to who goes into space and who conducts, as it were, the next evolutionary round of space development? These are key questions that we must resolve.
Also, gigantic cities of lights will descend out of their orbit to selected areas and will be anchored on the Earth. Right now, people who have reached a certain level of consciousness and are once again connected to the cosmic monad are drawn through their intuition to places chosen by the spiritual hierarchies in order to anchor the cities of light above these areas. These sites are absolutely secure. The Space Brothers and the spiritual hierarchies have created the so-called Islands of Light, where the Earth's frequency was increased, so that all...
As we raise the consciousness and we transform our body from a state of corporeality, which means this type of substance you see, and as our atoms and as our molecules and as our energies speed up, the DNA system is totally transformed into a higher octave and a higher frequency, so that there is a whole new strain coming in as a result of this. When we're passing through, for instance, the photon belt, there will be no darkness. It's all light. Everything in the body, then, of importance will be etheric in nature as opposed to corporeal or dense or density or whatever you see. Realities that we accept today will be no more. And so as a result of that, the DNA system and everything which constructs humanness will be changed, because we will now reach for a light body and will be of the light as opposed to darkness and corporeality. So any change that's signified today scientifically or biologically and what have you in the DNA is because of this infusion of new consciousness and new light, which of course is coming in at this point in time. Many of us are, many people already are largely light, although they keep the body of corporeality to do what they have to do here on earth, you see. Many people are already in the fourth dimension. Some are aware and some are not. But that's where we all have to go. And of course, by 2011, as we pointed out, all of us have the option and the privilege, if we choose to do so, of being in the fifth dimension.
The photon belt is an intense field of photon radiation, light radiation, which, both according to several modern astronomers, astrologers, as well as the Mayan tradition, emanates from the center of our galaxy, bisects the Pleiades star system and our star system at the same time. And the current period, we are moving in and out of this photon belt, spending several months in it every year. That the frequency that we spend in the photon belt is increasing by approximately 2 weeks every year. And according to the calculations of the Mayan calendar, around the year 2011, 2012 AD, we will be fully within the photon belt, and we will remain within the photon belt until around 4000 AD, according to the current calculations. And some of the work of both Jose Arguelles, other researchers, seems to suggest that the Mayans knew about this cycle, that every so often, many thousand years, we go in and out of the photon belt, that there seem to have been cultural as well as different climactic and earth changes that perhaps were sort of stimulated or affected by the entering and going out of that photon belt in the past history of the earth.
We are changing both DNA and RNA in many of us. Many stones, many vehicles here are changing our chakra systems also. There are no longer 7 chakras in most of us. We are opening up new chakra systems. You'll see much more about this in the next 5 or 10 years also. You'll begin to activate many more of them, and also your DNA and your RNA will not be replicating in the same fashions. There are children who are being born who are conscious when they are born. And this will change also a lot.
The Dark Ages. During the rule of a dark age of separation, all knowledge that is passed on and all instructions are tainted. Every religion, for instance, is a sect, a separation from the real divine inner truth of life. Religion is something that happens in God's holiest temple. Man himself in the depth of his heart and in communication with his divine inner self. Throughout the Dark Age, countless fallen sun cosmologies who have dogmatic religious views reached the earth and became our religions. They represented the climax of separation from oneself. God's channels, prophets, and mediums received their messages from the God-created and separated dimensions. Most often, the pure messages were mixed with information from the astral worlds and their own ego. There are as many truths and religions as there are worlds and heavens of polarities and levels of development in the cosmos in their different dimensions. Every social structure which serves the power of the lobbies and the ego instead of mankind is a split, which in the end will restructure itself or crumble. All knowledge without love is a separation from being. Whilst the old program of the Dark Age runs out with the old light workers, the Illuminati, and their plans of a world dictatorship controlling the world of finance, it will disintegrate with the changes on Earth. The new incarnated light workers of the Galactic Confederation are already leading mankind into the new golden age. After the great transformation of mankind, the Space Brothers would like to welcome us as cosmic citizens into the Galactic Confederation of Free Planets.
Where do the Illuminati receive their knowledge? Well, I would use the famous jokes and stories about Tesla and Edison. According to Edison, invention was 95% perspiration and 5% inspiration. According to Tesla, the way Tesla was doing his inventions, he would have 95% inspiration and probably 5% perspiration. Tesla would get a vision. All he has to do is put the vision into paper. Then he has to take the paper to the engineers to put it into metal in the shop. A little fine-tuning here and there, and the device works. This is the usual mode through which information and know-how is channeled from the extraterrestrial and even higher levels of existence to our planet. The know-how is given, and we are left to put it into our crude terrestrial engineering and manufacturing methods. That's why the crude anti-gravity saucers of the 1880s, 1890s were made with rivets. Giant cannons were used to fire the first anti-gravity devices toward the moon. Later on, in the early 1900s, more advanced technologies were used, but always the technology would follow up with our terrestrial one. Why are there two totally different scientific and engineering realities on the planet? Why the mass consumption engineering culture is 50 to 100 years behind the secret culture developed by the Illuminati? I have always had this very big question, very big puzzle in front of me. This is the Promethean dilemma for me. How come that with these incredibly good intentions to elevate the scientific and technological level of our civilization, we end up with the very negative and dismal results of all of these efforts? My feeling is that basically that is the major mode through which the, should I call it, the independent angelic presence on the planet is trying to corrupt the scientific and the political minds of the elite of our planet with visions of grandeur, with technologies that are too far ahead, possibly for our spiritual and moral development, and that are very dangerous, that can explode any minute and basically bring the end of our civilization, as has happened for dozens of times on our same planet. Again, information coming to us from many extraterrestrial revelations about previous illuminated efforts to speed up the evolution on the planet that ended up in very brutal, violent nuclear wars. The Illuminati have an agenda that would probably not be accepted in a normal, open voting system by the majority of the population on the planet. The creation of a new master race with hybridization experiments done with animals. The first hybrids were done in German concentration camps 50 years ago, and there are people that have seen documentary films about living, walking, breeding hybrids between humans and animals. Creation of a new master race under illuminated guidance and probably away from a package of genetic material that was introduced on the planet through an intervention by the Trinity.
The dark as well as the light power serves only one master, who is the creator of all that is, and whose goal is to create the superhuman. The final goal of human reincarnation is to create a human being who has experienced all imaginable positive and negative experiences, and therefore is able to develop beyond any judgment into the humanly incarnated image of God. A human being who has become God has lived through the completed range of the cosmic keyboard from the lowest to the highest note. God does not judge. He shines on his creations like a sun, on the flowers or the weeds, or on his being. The experiment of duality has come to an end, and the planet Earth is an ascending planet onto which the Creator himself incarnates in the shape of human beings. The return of the ascended brotherhood from Lemuria and Atlantis is the return of the 144,000 masters of light, the cosmic monads. They are incarnated as human beings, united, and together they will represent the white pyramid, God's eye, who sees everything, the presence of the Almighty on earth. They are the open witnesses who have all described from a different perspective the process of ascension, since they have already lived through it before.
We're moving from the little heart into a whole new state of beingness called the one heart. We moved from using the physical eyes, and as we awakened, then of course we activated our third eye, then those three eyes triangulated, and now we're discovering a whole new level of seeing, which is called the one eye. And it's an alignment with the all-seeing eye. Now on the planet itself, we're noticing a huge shift over as well. Duality is playing out its final dance. We're in the times of completion. So we'll notice that a great falling and dissolving, which you can see in all the world governments, in all the established religions, in the treatment of the environment. It's one of those things, a good way of describing this time is saying it was the best of times and it was the worst of times. We're feeling that outgoing pull of duality, and we're feeling that huge, powerful wave of the love of oneness coming in. Within the doorway of the 1111, there are 11 gates. These gates could be seen as frequency bands of energy. They are stepping up stations to higher levels of consciousness, very similar to locks in a canal. When you travel through a canal and you get to a lock, and then you stay in there while it fills up to water, and then it takes you and you travel on the next higher level. During the next, this 20-year period that the doorway of the 1111 is open, we are given the opportunity, each one on this planet who chooses oneness is given the opportunity to travel through these 11 different frequency bands of energy. This is also this unified presence we refer to as the bird star, us as one, the one that passes through the door. Now, this is the opportunity we've been waiting for eons for a mass ascension. How big it actually turns out to be depends on you. How many choose to make this journey? For those of us who are now anchoring our beings and living our lives in oneness, we're finding that we're living in a new world, that everything is different, that you see everything with totally different eyes. Nothing is the same as it was before. And it is only when a certain critical mass number of us around the planet leave duality behind and stop feeding that illusion of separation and start actually living our entire lives in oneness, that we can start fulfilling our higher purpose, the new level of our missions upon the earth, such as the establishment of islands of light, which many of us have had these long-standing yearnings to live in communities, highly calibrated beings living together in conscious oneness. Another thing that's going to be happening for those who are standing and living their lives in oneness are those true love relationships. These are not the old karmic relationships that we've all had our fill of on this planet, but these are those ones of true equality of two beings not only working together as one being, but realizing that they are both derivations of one being and stepping into that vaster oneness.
These 144,000 masters are under the command of the great mystery of the unspeakable, which is Christ in his highest personification, also called Maitreya, the Buddha of the synthesis, or Krishna. He entered a world of darkness 2,000 years ago in order to become a mortal human being himself. There are many names for the one spirit of the earth. God himself, through his Son, who became human on the lowest plane, was the planetary Logos, the earth's soul out of which emerged all heavens and dimensions, all demigods and all worlds of polarity. After the worlds of polarity in all their dimensions had further separated from him, he incarnated as a human being in order to overcome the separation. Until then, all heavens and gods existed subject to the law of polarity. They were only partial realities on higher levels. Now, all demigods, in order to dissolve their half-truths, have to incarnate. The age of masters and gurus comes to an end, because in the future, every human being will reach his own mastery with the help of his higher self. Now the masters of wisdom are following him in order to achieve their completion, thus embodying the cosmic law of the inner order in flesh and blood. The normal process of becoming a human being, with all its highs and lows, is the greatest mastery, the highest of all virtues. It is the union of compassion, unconditional love, and wisdom. The perfected masters live as ordinary human beings within society and will live as brothers. None of these ascended masters will ever claim again to be master or teacher. They will only describe the process of ascension. They will not distribute new concepts of enlightenment, because the highest wisdom is to honor life as it is, as an expression of divine being. Nothing has to be achieved. Enlightenment is the natural foundation of life, which grows daily through experience and learning. It is the knowledge that we are increasingly realizing who we really are.
When we have resolved this duality of being, for better or for worse, things will be seen differently. Every challenge on this earth, which I personally, along with every human being, must endure, is seen as an opportunity. We should indeed love it unconditionally and even be thankful. This also applies to pain, illness and other chaotic situations on this earth. There is a purpose, and that is all important. We need to look at things differently. It is man who makes judgment. In time and space, or in this unity of all living things, all is God-given. Everything has a purpose. A purpose. If we listen carefully, we will hear it again. It is his purpose. It is his life.
Es in Zeit und Raum geschehen oder in dieser Einheit mit allem Leben ist alles Gott gewollt, hat alles seinen Sinn. Seinen Sinn, wenn wir genau hin.
In the knowledge of the unity of life, or I could refer to it again as grace, there is no positive or negative. We judge the value ourselves, that is, it doesn't exist at a particular level, but our consciousness must develop beyond that. We must no longer look for the good or the not so good. All the darkness, the shadow and light will be arranged in a God consciousness. Everything good and not so good, everything will be arranged. God is the principle, and through him it is possible. We should no longer look at a person to see if he is good or not so good. I see the perfection of God in every person, in all life. Of course, the terminology, the development from God, varies. We do not have a right to direct, not even a right to raise it. Our duty is to glorify God. This unity, this principle of life, which offers perfection, which glorifies, and which sees Him in everything. This is the bridge. I would say in the dimension of light, in a new world or in a new house of the Father. This is the only possible way. We must develop beyond ourselves.
Verpflichtung ist es, Gott zu verherrlichen. Diese Einheit, dieses Lebensprinzip der Vollkommenheit anzubeten, zu verherrlichen und in allem zu sehen. Das ist die...
My personal experience of Christ consciousness is that on this earth, man receives the light from the Father through Christ, His only begotten Son. He then surrenders himself to God in humility and servitude. This is unlike Buddhism, which says that there is no need to reason, not to come into contact with shadows, because karma will gather there again. I do not see it this way. I must embrace all life which I encounter, and I must serve my neighbour in a state of consciousness. This is once again what is referred to as the washing of the feet. We must sacrifice ourselves for our neighbours, and should it be his or her wish, or should we say his or her circumstance, then also elevate him or her to the throne. This is serving in the vineyard of the Father, and this is how I see it.
Weil sich da wieder Karma aufbaut, so sehe ich das nicht, also das betrifft jetzt nur mich selber. Ich muss alles Leben annehmen, was auf mich zukommt und nach dem Bewusstseinszustand des Nächsten dienen.